Last episode, by the way, I'm going to just do this up front before we go for the intro. Last episode, I recorded a thing for like an outro saying like more or less we made it to 25 episodes. Thank you to everybody who's listened. And I don't know where the audio recording went. So I just had the video and I didn't put it in the video because I didn't know where the audio recording went. And it's sad because it was really heartfelt and nice. But thank you to everybody. It's episode 26. So I guess we'll celebrate 52 instead of 50. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good one. And on with the televised broadcast. Frederick County, Maryland, 1909. A man by the name of Bill Gifferson was walking home on a cold February night when he was suddenly lifted into the air. A giant creature with a huge beak and wingspan took the helpless man to the top of a nearby hill, where a terrified onlooker witnessed the beast pierce the jugular of Gifferson. Like that. It bit him. Within seconds, Bill had been emptied of all his blood. With a screeching roar, the beast flew up and disappeared into the night sky, ushering in the modern chapter of a centuries-old tale. This is the incredible story of the Snallygaster, the American Chimera. What's up, man? How's everything?
That intro was phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Phenomenal.
This is the most boring of the stories I'm going to tell today, so that's pretty well.
All right, I'm ready.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the I'm Not Crazy podcast. My name is Andrew. Today, we are joined by now two-time guest, Rich Payne. Hello. And now I know your last name. Didn't even have to ask. You know?
I'm happy to be back here. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you on. Like, Ray, pierce the jugular of that subscribe button. That's what I wrote down for this. Because in the intro, we said he pierced the jugular of Bill Gifferson. So pierce the jugular of the subscribe button. And that was the setup for that. So good to see it. So today's sources for the episode. So before we get into the episode, the Snallygaster, we're going to have to do a suspend your disbelief for this one, right? Because this is really stupid. So we're going to suspend our disbelief as a unit here, okay? Together, we are going to make a pact, hear me out, where we believe what we're reading in the moment, and then we just take it one sentence at a time, okay? Because there's going to be some really stupid things that we do in here and things we say, and it's not really going to make too much sense at all.
All right, I'm ready.
Believe it or not, for this stupid fucking story, I have 3 sources. There it is. So this one is The United States of Cryptids by J.W. Ackerman. Acker. I just added a man to the end of it. Sorry. Didn't mean to gender you. And then we got Ghosts and Legends of Frederick County. This book took me surprisingly long to find, and I got it for $2 from Seattle Goodwill online.
How long did it take you to find that book?
2 months.
Interesting.
There's one other one on Amazon now, and it goes for, no joke, 3 times the price, which is $6. And then The United States of Cryptids. If you're remotely interested in cryptids at all, I use this book to spark ideas here and there. It's just little stories. It's a compilation, so it's not going to have all the details, all the juicy stuff. But this gets the juices flowing for me, and it gives me some creative ideas of what to do. So if you like cryptids, definitely check this one out. And then the last one, which I actually have as an ebook, I don't have it as a physical book because it didn't come in time, is Snallygaster, The Lost Legends of Frederick County by Patrick Boynton. If you're interested in every little detail, as per usual, go pick up these books, though some were harder to find than others. Like I said, Ghosts and Legends of Frederick County, you don't really need it. If you pick up Patrick Boyd's book, Boynton, terrible with names, a lot of the information from this book is in there. Although it is fun to just kind of hold it and look at it yourself. Okay. Now that all the stupid shit's out of the way, we're going to get into the monster. It's been a while since we've gotten to do a monster description here. So this is fun.
What was the last monster
The last monster was... We had Betty and Barney Hill was last, Polybius, Exorcism, Cases it's the Beast of Bray Road. That was 7 episodes ago. So we're going back to our roots here with this one. Because, I am mainly like to say monsters are my shit. I like the regional monsters. That's my thing. The description of the monster, like most cryptids, is ever-changing. But the most common description is as follows. It's a large dragon reptilian body with a single eye on its chicken-like head. Sometimes it is described as having tentacles hanging out of its mouth or beak, whatever you want to say. Sometimes the tentacles are on its body, but tentacles are usually something that's there, and it uses it as sort of a like a Venus flytraps type of situation. It said that he has talons, sometimes hooves, sometimes horns, and even the ability to change color, size, and shape at whim, which is very convenient for something that's trying to hide because it could just become anything, which we will see they take full advantage of later on. Later in its lifespan, the creature takes a turn not unlike the chupacabra, shedding its original form from a dog-like wolfman archetype, depending on who you speak to. But this will be saved for later, like I said. And if you're here because of Fallout 76, Rich, here's the connection once again. It's in Fallout 76. It's one of the monsters in Fallout 76. That's you're just going to become my video game monster.
You're 76 guy. I mean,
you're just going to be my overall video game monster. I'm going to widen the umbrella so that we have more options with you.
We did the Flatwoods monster, which was also in Fallout 76.
That was also in Fallout 76, you're right. But this one is totally different in the game. 100%. This one is like a little shriveled up thing. It has 6 arms and has like 100 eyes all over it.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be like an experiment gone wrong and less of like an antediluvian chimera, which is what this is. Chris is taking a shit right now. It's pretty wild.
Oh, he is.
He is 100%. Yeah. No, he's snuck into the bathroom real quiet.
He's taking a dump.
You can't trick me. I hear you. I hope it picked it up. Now that we have some type of general understanding of the cryptids itself, it's time to get into the tale of the Snallygaster. Before I get to reading, I'm going to do something real quick. Rich, do you know what an Aztec death whistle is?
An Aztec death whistle. Hold on.
So now we're going to get into the Snallygaster attacks, the first part of our lore here for the Snallygaster. On February 12th, 1909, terror would strike Frederick County, Maryland. Two Middleton Valley Middleton Valley Register writers. I'm gonna just say now we're gonna eventually move to MVR. That's gonna be the abbreviation because we say this fucking thing so many times I got tired of typing it out.
Middleton Valley.
The Middletown Valley Register.
Middletown.
It's super hard to remember also, so like it's one of those things that you can write 100 times and you have to still look it up every time. Very annoying. Anyway, two of their writers, George C. Roderick and Ralph S. Wolfe, published their paper that day with the front headline warning the residents of a new creature, which went on to kill Bill Gifferson. As we stated in the intro, Bill was taken by the beast and savagely sucked of his blood before his husk of a body was thrown back to the ground.
Hold on, I'm like confused now. Like, so what's the background with Bill Gifferson? Like, who found them? Like, how these writers find out about this?
And so Bill Gifferson was brought to the top of a hill and drained of his blood. And I assume someone saw and reported it. Like I said, we're going to suspend our disbelief. You know, we can't go headstrong right into it's made up.
No, I know, but I'm just like...
We got to suspend it.
I'm having such a hard time with that now because now I just want to know.
Okay.
I'm getting impatient.
So from what it seems like, right, because I'm going to be honest with you, this was a major point of my own contention because I couldn't find who reported it. It doesn't say that another person was even there.
What the fuck?
So it's just like this man was carried to the top of a hill and then he died and everyone just knew about it the next day.
Sucked of his blood and left there.
And we have details.
And there's not a single witness.
So I'm going to assume I could not find the original paper. I tried. I'm going to say
it's not out there.
That Peter Boynton went to the actual, Frederick County area and found the actual local archives themselves using the microfiche. But right now, that is not something that I had the access to. Therefore, I have genuinely no idea. But I'm going to say someone was standing there with him.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just say it was Bill Gifferson's cousin.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Jill
here.
Rifferson.
Jill Rifferson.
All right. Jill was with him, and
Jill
she saw, and she said,
Rifferson
it's bad. He's dead. That's what she said. So, within a few days, residents all over the county started reporting the beast flying overhead, including one George Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt. George was out hunting when he saw the flying... His name isn't Jingleheimer Schmidt. George was hunting when he saw the beast flying overhead and did what any freedom-blood American would do and took a shot at the bastard. But in a terrifying twist, the bullet bounced right off his skin as if it was plated with iron. The Snallygaster, understandably angry from George's murder attempt, started to chase the horrified man through the woods. George claimed that the beast snapped at him with his long, sharp beak, saying he was missing his neck by inches. Like that. Like imagine you just get fucking like a little pinch, but it's just like a really big, gigantic bird. with one eye and tentacles coming out of it. That's a lot. It's really scary. So he would reach back, missing him by only a couple inches, before finally reaching his barn, locking himself inside. The Snallygaster did not understand how to open a door. With shit dripping down his pants, I made that up, George lived to tell the tale of the attack of the hideous Snallygaster.
Shit dripping down his pants.
I made that up. That's written in there.
And you know what? If I was George, shit would probably be dripping down my pants.
I think I'd have a lot more than shit. You know? I think it would just be pure scared energy just coming out of me at that point. It would just be a sludge of pink.
Sludge of pink.
It would just be my own intestines slowly making their way out.
Oh my god.
So,
I think that's a lot worse than shit.
I think it is a lot worse than shit. George Jacobs said it was like plated with iron, more or less.
Superman.
Like Superman. And not unlike most cryptids, it's, the idea is that it's this like ever-living creature and it has a reptilian scaly outer shell. So the idea is that it's so strong it could, it's not really anything new. Now, though the Snallygaster is claimed as a local legend to Frederick County, the beast was said to be flying to neighboring states to hunt for more victims, including other parts of Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, sometimes being characterized as the Jersey Devil sightings instead. There's some contention on sightings after 1909 and all that. Really, just the contention is just from this county in Maryland. No one else. Everyone's just like, yeah, it's the Jersey Devil is a separate thing. But this county's like, no. That's a Snallygaster, even though they're described to be two different things. I didn't hear goat head. Did you?
I didn't hear the goat head.
Neither did I. Unbelievable. For weeks, papers from all over the area told of the Snallygaster and its alarming speed at which it traveled. It was able to go from state to state within days of each other, and it was a bird. Then the unthinkable happened. The Snallygaster laid an egg somewhere between the Maryland towns of Gapland and Burkittsville, supposedly being, quote, as large as a barrel and covered in a tough parchment-like shell of yellowish color. This launched the beast into the national eye for the first of many times to come, as stated in the Hagerton Mail, and I quote, from descriptions sent, now this is quoted in the article, and this is from the Smithsonian, a scientist from the Smithsonian, right? Well, this is 100% real. This is in the article.
Do you think if you were to go to the Smithsonian archives, if you were able to get in there, because I'm not sure if it's open to the public, do you think you would be able to actually find this account?
I'm going to say they burned this out of embarrassment. But we're jumping ahead. I'm going to say you can't find this anywhere. It's been scrubbed. So, from descriptions sent to the Smithsonian Institute at Washington, they write back that it is either a winged bovolopus or a Snallygaster, as it has the characteristics of both. These animals are exceedingly rare, and the hide of the Snallygaster is said to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a square foot, as it is the only known hide that were properly polished punctal shells used by Africans in Mboland for ornaments. Telegrams and letters started pouring in from nationalists, and a strict watch is being kept to try and locate its den or roost. That is from the Smithsonian Institute. This was 115 years ago.
Oh my!
This is not that long ago. Okay.
Oh my god! What the hell is a winged bovolopus? What is?
We'll find out in a little bit.
That's also a cryptid, though. Or?
No. That's like a science term. We're going to get into what bovolopus means later.
Are we also going to get into how someone would know that the Snallygaster is the only hide that will properly polish punctal shells?
Well, it's because it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a square foot. It wouldn't be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a square foot if people didn't know about that.
Okay. All right.
Like beluga caviar, which will, funny enough, come into the story later. But beluga caviar is like the most expensive version of caviar because it's kind of hard to get eggs from a beluga whale. I don't know if you've seen them recently, but they're kind of large.
Wait, beluga caviar. That was a real thing, or it still is a real thing?
It is. It's from Stern, though. I don't know what that means.
Oh, probably maybe sturgeon fish?
Sturgeon, not stern. That's angry. Sturgeon.
Sturgeon, right? Yeah.
Sturgeon. I only know local monsters. I don't know anything about caviar. I can't tell you. But all I know is that it's expensive. And I know that because I wrote it in this episode later on.
All right.
And exactly a week later, the Middletown Valley Register, MVR, would publish an update on the feared Snallygaster, with some of the information being the most known pieces of info about the case. First off, it would seem the Smithsonian was just as captured by the tales as everyone else, as they voiced wanting to capture a living Snallygaster to study. And probably the most overused and misstated fact of the whole story is that apparently former President Theodore Roosevelt considered postponing a trip to Africa to hunt it himself. Now, whenever you look up the Snallygaster, right, it's like an 8-minute clip, and all they do is just pick the best parts, and they just put it together, and they make a story that doesn't exist, right? Ex-President Theodore Roosevelt did not go and hunt the Snallygaster in Maryland. I don't know why I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. He didn't do that. I even wrote here. He did not hunt it. He did not kill it. He never saw it. No matter what some of the videos I've watched would like to say, President Roosevelt, it just was a thought, maybe. We don't even know. Who knows? Did you ask him? I didn't. The next part is called The End of the First Reign, as if they're royal families. I did that on purpose. They're not. They're creatures. Fortunately for the residents of Frederick County and its neighbors, the Snallygaster didn't plan on feeding on human blood forever. I was going to say flesh, but I guess either works. As the story continued to progress and got more and more ridiculous, the Snallygaster transformed from a large, dangerous animal to a demonic creature that literally rose from the pits of hell. Like, quite literally, that's what happened, according to what happens next. The Middletown Valley Register, MVR, would report of 5 men taking on the beast for over a half hour, finally managing to fire a well, like a water well. Even the author of the book is like, I don't understand what they were trying to say here, but it's funny. And he fired a well which pierced the septum of the monster, basically giving it a nose ring from that point on. So anytime you would see the Snallygaster, it had like a septum piercing. So I'm just showing you how this heightened after a while, how this all happened within a month.
This got out of control.
Real fast. Like day by day, it was just like, we got to do something
like
here.
Will Ferrell and Anchorman. You ever see Anchorman?
Yes.
We sit on
I
the chair. Well, boy, that escalated quickly.
Yeah. Well, other accounts claimed the beast was hanging out over a kiln, which is they used to make wood into charcoal. When the operator saw the creature and approached cautiously, but accidentally scared the beast, which then used its wings to blow the man down. It then flew over to a tank with about 100 gallons of water in it and took it down in seconds, then saying out loud, quote, "My, I'm dry. I haven't had a good drink since I was killed in the Battle of Chickamauga," referencing one of the deadliest battles in the Civil War. This is the only time that happens. Moving on. That is
What the fuck? What the fuck is going on?
It talks. I have never seen a story escalate so fast.
Now this thing
this one
talks.
100 gallons of water? Do you know how big something has to be to take down 100 gallons of water?
Oh my god. Wow. Wow.
And even the author is like, this is the most ridiculous claim so far. Okay. And it gets crazier. You ready? The story would finally seemingly come to an end just about a month after it started. The paper that started it all, Middletown Valley Register, MVR, would put out a headline reading, quote, "The Origins of the Great Snallygaster." The article states the U.S. government had identified the beast as one of many ancient creatures that lived in the bowels of the earth, only being released after an earthquake in Italy opened up a fissure, releasing the Snallygaster from the depths of hell. It then flew all the way to Maryland, where it found its lair in the South Mountain area. It was returning just a day later with its horns covered in blood. It then opened the fissure again before disappearing within, the ground mending back up as if nothing had ever happened. Bless you.
Thank you.
Ending the terrifying hold on Maryland. The Snallygaster was gone. So, a month after, one guy gets attacked by a random more or less unidentified animal. 1 month later, we're saying that it rose from the hell pits because of a fissure in Italy, flew to Maryland, and then opened the fissure up a month later and disappeared into it.
Disappeared again. Well,
suspending disbelief.
That escalated quickly.
Fortunately for the residents of Frederick County, the Snallygaster was gone, and the land was cast into a state of peace. I wrote this like a Legend of Zelda storyline. After a few decades, the monster became nothing more than a folk tale to scare children from drifting too far into the woods. But if you did, you'd be eaten by the Snallygaster. That's what they told you.
The Snallygaster.
I'd be like, hey, Jimmy, the Snallygaster's going to come and get you. Don't go in them woods. And he'd be like, I won't, Big
They
Papa.
should make a movie.
And then, molested by his uncle.
Like Jaws, but with the Snallygaster.
It'd just be 100 times less scary. But the beast was ready to strike fear in the hearts of Maryland once again. On November 11th, 1932, our friends at the MVR would report of a creature seen flying over the South Mountains once again. I love to think... What?
What does MVR stand for?
Remember? The newspaper we talked about.
It's Middletown
Valley
Register.
See, I told you. It's really hard to remember.
MVR.
I like to think that these guys that are working at MVR right now are like the sons of the guys that wrote the original story, but that's not the case. But I like to think that in my head. Like this town has a decades-long secret, and there's like a cult of the Snallygaster keeping it alive. Love it.
Stays within the town and the town only.
Yeah, and there's like 5 families, and then they all fight, and, one of them has, a daughter with powers, and she takes over the village. What show is that? Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I don't know. I made that up. The description would add a couple notable features, such as the tentacles coming out of its mouth, as we said earlier, and the ability to change shape, size, and color at will. This would lend us very well to the idea of a cryptid that is always changing and is constantly something that the media could more or less just make into whatever they want to sell papers. Not to jump ahead too far. Yeah. But, After the following weeks proved to be more fruitful of sightings than it was during its first run in 1909. Sightings were kept flooding in, with elders of the area remembering the stories from back in their younger days, and how, wait a minute, there was an egg found somewhere between Gapsland, right? Gapsland and Burkittsville. We forgot about that egg, huh? I just threw it in there before, and I didn't really say much about it because we all forgot about it, right? No. The egg hatched. That's what this has to be, right? And that's what it was. According to the scientists speaking through the MVR writers, it took between 20 to 25 years to incubate one of these eggs, with all making sense of how why the monster would make a comeback 23 years later. And after numerous sightings, once again, got the monster into national attention, the creature would see its demise a month after its resurfacing. The newspaper kind of was getting sightings. They just reported normal sightings. Then all of a sudden one day, the Snallygaster was dead. And this is why. The story goes that the creature was flying above the trees of the Frog Hollow section of Washington County when it was suddenly curious about the 2,500-gallon tank of moonshine that was illegally being produced just below it. The Snallygaster swooped down to get a closer look, but was seemingly overtaken by the fumes, as lye was added to the mash at that time, making the moonshine seem stronger. So the fumes of the lye more or less took it out of the sky, which I looked up and it turns out was a problem with birds. And how they would find moonshiners is they would find dead birds on the ground and follow them to the trail. I totally made that up, 100%. I had you, though. The fumes from the lye seemingly took the beast from the sky where it fell into the boiling liquid, cooking it until its death. Officials would get a tip about the illicit operation, but the moonshiners were long gone, leaving the skeletal remains of the Snallygaster in that same vat. The officers, frightened by the whole thing, then were said to take 500 pounds of dynamite and blew up the entire area, demolishing any chance of the revival of the beast. The lye in the mash was said to make the moonshine stronger, so that people would get more fucked up on it, but they were just getting poisoned by lye. And it also contributed to why the Snallygaster, more or less was just skeletal remains by the end of it, because famously, people in criminal underworlds, possibly starts with a C, ends in an L, they like to get rid of bodies using lye, and they literally melt them into a goo and then pour them into the ocean. They're famous for it. So
wow,
that is actually something that's doable.
Okay.
Cartels. That's what I was trying to say. But as before the thing refused to die. I don't know why I read it like that. But as before, the thing refused to die. with another one of them cropping up just 2 years later, being explained away as an egg from the last one 2 years before. But due to the warm weather, it hatched very early. Now, I don't understand why they went with this instead of there being more than one egg from 1909. Because if it was 2 years after that, the first one that came back, the first egg, that would be 23 years. And then if you add 2, it's 25 years, which fits the incubation period. I don't know why they didn't just go with that. There was a second egg. You know, we're already like at demon spawn of the earth. Why are we doing eggs? And also, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Another Snallygaster showed up in 1947, showing up right in the midst of one of the first widespread sightings of UFOs in the country, which is interesting because it kind of started to turn from the same thing that everything had in this time period, where we started going from seeing giant birds to UFOs. The transition is very well documented in Mothman Prophecies. John Keel's my actual pope, though he is dead. So we should pick a new pope. But he was very influential in writing things about, you know, interdimensional monsters and that they're not coming from space. They're coming from a different dimension altogether, all that type of stuff. They're ultra-terrestrials, not extraterrestrials. Basically, this is where the idea of the Snallygaster becoming an ultra-terrestrial kind of starts to take shape. By 1952, the Snallygaster had come back more times than anyone thought was possible, with someone seeing the creature seemingly every few years. Until again, they didn't, and the Snallygaster would lay dormant, giving the land another moment of peace. You see the name of this section. It's called The Rise of the Dueo.
The Dueo.
And that's how you say it. So that's good.
Dueo.
So the Dueo is super interesting, and this is a phenomenon that starts to happen that I like to call snally washing.
Right.
We will get into snally washing soon.
I see. I don't want to get totally ahead, but the first... So we're going from 1952 to
1965, yeah.
1965.
We're just covering more or less that period in between, because the sightings are all the same over and over. It's all, they saw it flying above their heads, or they saw it attack livestock, or something like that.
So now we have a 13-year time jump, and the Dueo.
And then this is where the Dueo starts to get talked about. So by 1965, a new creature started being reported, as we said, going by the name Dueo. It was described as a monkey-faced bipedal wolf-like thing, with other people describing it as more like a wolfman and less like a monkey, but all around the same type of look. It would terrorize livestock and was said to be possibly vampiric, just like the Snallygaster. It had the locals riled up, with one farmer claiming, quote, if it was someone dressed in a monkey suit, he was monkeying with death because they were going to shoot on sight, end quote. Sounds right. If it was a guy in a suit, that actually has happened before, where someone got shot. The Hammerstein Ghost. Yeah, the Hammerstein Ghost was a ghost in England that was supposedly being seen in the streets. And then there was one dude, and he was a butcher, and the ghost was supposed to wear all white, which was also what butchers wore back in the day. And this guy was like, I'm not afraid of this thing. I'm not going to stop wearing white. Who's going to confuse me for a ghost? And then someone shot him and killed him. And it was one of the first cases in history where we had to be like, it's the fact that you went out and tried to shoot something that we're arresting and charging you for. It's not necessarily that you shot what you thought was a ghost. Like, the reason that you did it doesn't really make a difference if you did it. That's kind of where that statute came from, you know? Anyway.
It's what people dressing up like cryptids and fooling everyone.
Yeah.
Like, isn't the most famous Bigfoot sighting a guy in a Bigfoot suit?
the what's it called? The Gimli tapes? It's
like 2 college students, right?
Yeah, and the guy that made the suit came out like, I don't know, 10 years ago and said he made the suit and like gave proof and everything. But at the end of the day, I think we all knew at the beginning that was a man in a suit. I don't think any of us really at our core was like, that's Bigfoot. And if you did, you should get psychiatric help because, you know, it looks like a man in a suit. Very obviously.
What, Andrew? They're not crazy.
My uncle hunts Bigfoot. I've mentioned him on this show before. And I'm not going to talk shit about Uncle Andy, right?
Why have you not got him on here then?
I'm not going to talk shit about Uncle Andy, right? But he is like a History Channel Bigfoot guy. Like, he's been on the History Channel for hunting Bigfoot, like, legitimately. And it is incredible because he's like the guy that's like, Rah! In the woods in the middle of the night. And they're just screaming to each other, thinking that they're talking to a Bigfoot. It's pretty fantastic. And Anyway, this is so many different things here.
No,
The Dueo started to remind the older residents once again of Snally, with them quickly assuming that this was another form of the Snallygaster. I guess, not for long. Thus ushering in Snally washing of cryptids. This is a very serious topic, Rich. The Dueo is just one of quite a few cryptids that got Snally washed, meaning they were different cryptids that were actually just turned into the Snallygaster. The Jersey Devil, the Dueo, and surprisingly many other flying cryptids have been falsely labeled as Snallygasters, and that needs to end. Anyway.
I stand with the Snallygaster.
It's ridiculous. The hunt for the Snallygaster. So now the Dueo is important. Even though it is kind of just, I'm going to just put it out there, we're probably going to cover it in the future. It is its own separate thing. It just kind of got looped into this, but it's its own separate story with its own lore.
You could use that as a leeway now.
A leap, as they would say in the frog world.
A leap in the frog world into a Dueo episode.
Into a Dueo lily pad.
Dueo.
So now we're going to get into what I think is my favorite part of the story. This is my favorite of the Snallygaster tales that came up when I was doing this, right?
Okay.
Now we're going to get to the hunt for the Snallygaster, and this is actually fucking nuts. This was led by the Washington Post, right? This was done in, I believe, 1965, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry, 1970. It's like 1975 or something like that, right? This was done, I want to say a year after Watergate, who the Washington Post is the one that broke the story, right? So more or less the way that Peter Boynton in the book puts it forward is that the Washington Post was like on a high from like outing the president for a conspiracy and like getting basically the second president in history possibly impeached, and they were going through this process and they were like really like hyped about it because it was them that did it. So they were
during Nixon.
This was like during this, yeah,
like the Watergate scandal.
This was they are the ones that broke Watergate, the Washington Post, right? So they were kind of like funding everything because they were making so much money that they were like, we can't lose. So they were just pouring money into things, right?
Shit.
And this exact hunt here for the Snallygaster couldn't be more of a perfect example of them just how fucking stupid they were with money at this time. And now to get to the most fun part of the story, as I said, that time when the Washington Post hired an insane team of people to catch the Snallygaster, being led by Gordon Chaplin, who documented everything in his report titled, quote, "The Grand Bicentennial Washington Post / Potomac Expedition to the Darkest Maryland in Search of the Monstrous Snallygaster," end quote. Really rolls off the tongue, that title. They sought out to find the Snallygaster, which by this point had evolved into the ape-like, shaggy-haired creature, more like the Dueo or even a Bigfoot. During the 70s, there was Bigfoot mania. That's when Bigfoot became like the cultural thing that it is for the most part. It's always been talked about, but that was when it blew up. Now, the team of researchers involved are as follows, and these people are genuinely big names at the time, okay? They had Dick Swanson. Had to start with Dick. Spent 6 years in Vietnam as a photographer for Life magazine. He would handle documenting the expedition. He was an award-winning photographer for the Vietnam War, and they got him on to hunt this Snallygaster, okay? Brian and Danuta Lockett were the first pair to survive living in the big thicket of Texas, and they would handle the survival aspects such as food and shelter. Ginny Duran, award-winning filmmaker, would handle lighting, sound, and special effects. Not really sure what special effects they're talking about. And then you have Helen Chaplin, who is 100% the Yoko Ono of the group. She was the wife of Gordon and was the group's psychic and healer. And it was the 70s, so that would make a lot more sense, I guess, in context.
The group Yoko Ono?
She's only there because she's his wife. Did they need a psychic healer? I don't think they really did.
No.
You know?
They did not need
I don't think they needed a psychic healer. I think they could have went without that. That's just me. All of these people, except for Helen Chaplin, are like highly distinguished in their field. So if you look up Ginny Duran, she is an award-winning film. She has an Academy Award, right?
Wow.
Dick Swanson has worked for like every major magazine publication on planet Earth as a photographer. Like he is a renowned. This is like an A-team to go get the Snallygaster. It's insane. The amount of money on just paying them alone is absurd,
they
right?
Assembled the Avengers of the 70s.
The Avengers of the Cryptids. It's
Avengers
insane.
Of the Cryptids. The Crypt Avengers.
The Crypt Vengers. Now, the Crypt Vengers would set out seemingly milking the Washington Post for as much as they could possibly give to fund the expedition. The equipment for the trip included, you ready? Top-of-the-line hiking equipment and gear, makes sense. Weapons in case they are attacked by the Snallygaster. I guess that makes sense, even though they were supposed to bring it back alive if they found it. The best thermal imaging at the time to photograph it. Medical supplies for every possible outcome. A government-issued pressure cooker. A Bible. Many bottles of Moet champagne. And 10 pounds of beluga caviar. As well as a flag with the Washington Post logo on it.
Okay.
And now, funny, to Gordon's credit, he did approach the Snallygaster with more of an undiscovered animal lens and less of a supernatural hellspawn, though he was convinced that it was psychic. Just like his wife, I guess.
Just like Yoko.
Just like Yoko. Nah. He used the gorilla as his foundation, not because it's psychic, because many cryptozoologists will point out that the gorilla was a myth for many outside of Africa until like the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Wow.
We didn't think gorillas were real. We just thought that explorers were coming back and telling tales, and we were like, oh yeah, of course there's a fucking giant ape there. And then we were like, oh no, there's legitimately a giant ape there. It's huge. It could murder everything. That's more or less what happened with the gorilla. So cryptozoologists will have to point that out. But what I believe is the failing argument here, and it's just glaring. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it, right? The failing argument is that we are now in 1975, not in 1865. So there's like a big difference in technology. Like you have thermal imaging for your photography camera, where in 1865 they had a shotgun. After speaking with self-proclaimed Snallygaster expert, who convinced them it was an interdimensional creature, John Lutz, the group was ready to embark on their adventure to find it. The morning of the next day was supposedly filled with omens, according to Helen. One of those include that there was a dead dog on the side of the road, there was garbage all over their neighbor's lawn, and there was like a plant or something that was fucked up. Something like that. You know, I guess you can look for omens anywhere if you look hard enough. And then the worst news possible hit the crew. The beluga caviar was being held by customs due to improper storage. So it turns out that they brought fresh caviar instead of canned, and there was a risk that if it went into the water, it could hatch, bringing an unwanted beluga population to that area. That is 100% real of why they stopped it from going.
This is the most ridiculous story ever.
It's so stupid.
This is outrageous. A beluga caviar.
Though this was a huge blow to the team, they mustered the courage to continue with their schedule, even though they were a little late. They then met with their guide, Tom Sabatka, who they basically make sound like a little hillbilly goblin that runs through the swamp and shows them where to go. Tom would help them navigate as he knew the swamp, quote, better than anyone, while also boasting that he knew where the creature's hideout was. Now, the swamp seemed to be legitimately dangerous, with huge drops being hidden by thick, cloudy water. They advanced forward carefully, safely reaching their destination, though due to the caviar incident, it was much darker and later than anticipated. While setting up camp, they would hear a wide array of noises surrounding them, though they were never able to catch the culprit. So they would hear like twigs snapping, and they would just shine a light. And they never found anything, surprising. I forgot to say this early on. Frederick County is where Blair Witch took place. So maybe it was Blair Witch. It wasn't.
Oh, wow.
That's a movie. So after setting up a radio, the team decided to try something that they learned from talking to people in town. Apparently, the Snallygaster liked music. So in between playing Sasquatch calls on their huge speakers, they started playing Jimmy Buffett's hit song, A Pirate Looks at 40. Now we're going to play an edit that I made called Snallygaster in Paradise. So that was the entire night. This investigation was just that for like 7 hours.
This is outrageous.
You look upset.
You're playing big. It doesn't start off with a pirate looks at 40. It starts off with a Bigfoot
I'm gonna
sound.
play it. I'm gonna play the sound for them. They heard what we heard.
They did hear it, right?
No, I'm saying the audience, not the people filming.
There's no way that's what these people did.
I swear to God, they said that they would play Sasquatch calls and then switch to playing Jimmy Buffett to try to lure it in. Rich, I promise you, I swear, I can show you the documentation. It's cited in the book. I promise.
I believe you. I believe you.
After a long night of primal screams and learning to get all their worries taken away in Margaritaville, the team woke up empty-handed the next morning, though they were determined to stay persistent. But the article ends abruptly, stating no other communication has been made since, leaving the fate crew to be a mystery, and ending the modern tale of the Snallygaster. Now, this is a bad mystery because they all have IMDb pages that you could go on and see their work after this, so it's not really too much of a mystery what happened. They just went on to do other things. They were fine. Everyone lived. Except Helen. I'm going to assume she didn't really find too much work after this.
She got caught up in the 70s.
She was psychic healing shit.
Is it real?
Is it real? No. We're going to get to that part of the episode now. We made it here, right? We'd suspended our disbelief. Good job, everybody. Now we could drop our disbelief here. It was suspended, right? Drop it to the ground. Relax. Stretch. It's all fake. Of course it is, because it's a giant one-eyed chicken dragon. Of course it's fake.
There.
Of course it's fake. Of course it is.
You had me so worried.
Yeah. It turns out there is not a Jimmy Buffett-loving dragon flying around Maryland. Who would have thought?
And people traveling with 10 pounds of caviar?
That is real. That happened. All of this is real. Like, all of the human aspects of this is real. It's just the monster isn't an actual real thing. But that expedition 100% fucking happened.
I was hoping a lot of those humans
no
wasn't real.
No. They were real. The stories had to come from somewhere, right? Remember when I said the story may span centuries? Well, just like the Loveland Frogman, go check out that episode. It's really good. You should go watch it.
Check it out now.
Right now.
We'll show up
Don't
to your
even
house.
finish this one. Finish this one. I'm just joking. But afterwards, you should watch that one. It's very good. It's the same vein. The Snallygaster had a few ancestors that helped understand how it spawned. In the late 1730s, we're going all the way back to 1730, bitches.
Whoa.
Sorry, I didn't mean to use the B word.
Bitches.
Shit. In the late 1730s, a large community of Pennsylvania Dutch made their way to Maryland, bringing with them folklore and tradition. This included a creature known as the Snallygaster, which means quick spirit in German. This creature supposedly resembled more of a European dragon and would eat naughty children. Very, like, fairy tale-esque, and much more of a dragon of, like, actual folklore and less of, like, a weird cryptid thing from the Pennsylvania Dutch. The Dutch would put 5, 6, and 7-pointed stars on their property to ward off the spirit dragon, with the name Hex, meaning witch in German, being given to those symbols, birthing the idea of hexing someone using symbols. I found that out. That's actually where that comes from. I didn't know. Like, legitimately, the word hex comes from the idea of putting a symbol on your barn to keep the Snallygaster away. Who would have thought? But the creature's usage does have a dark past, as slave owners in the 1850s would use the legend to scare slaves so they wouldn't try to escape. This led to the Snallygaster, which by this point was known as the Snallygaster, being used to threaten black children throughout the latter half of the 1800s. This even is seen in a lot of the supposed 1909 attacks. I left out that every single person that was attacked was a black man. That was like a thing that was a little bit of a pattern in the 1909 sightings.
Right.
And it was hinted that more or less the Snallygaster attacked them because they shouldn't have been there when they were. That was more or less like the undertone of the whole thing, right? And finally, in 1909, the Snallygaster, as we were told, was born, being an amalgamation of all of those previous stories. Hello, cat. He's very handsome. What are you doing? You sleeping? Okay, go to sleep. You're very handsome. I love you very much. Don't bite me. But unfortunately, we know for a fact that all of these were hoaxes. I guess fortunately. I guess that's a fortunate thing. That's right. It turns out the whole thing about using the hide of the Snallygaster, as it was the only way for the people of Umbopeland could shine their puckle shells. I got news for you. Neither puckle shells nor the land of Umbople exist. They were just 100% made up things, as they were made up by those two writers that I mentioned earlier, George and Ralph. Most, if not all, of the people mentioned in the story were also made up, All of the eyewitnesses, all the accounts, totally 100% made up and fabricated. The Smithsonian probably did not care at all, and the former president may not have ever known that this was even a thing. This was a publicity stunt, more or less, for the MVR.
What the fuck?
It was all a hoax to sell papers, with it also being strongly influenced, and I feel like this is the nail in the coffin, by a sighting of the Jersey Devil just 1 week before the original 1909 sighting. So what happened was that George and Ralph saw how that sold papers like this, and people went nuts. So they made their own version using folklore of the area to give it a little bit more zhuzh. It's one of those things that accidentally became marketing genius, because we know this as an actual like cryptid thing with legend and folklore, and it was just made by two dudes in a newspaper because they wanted us to make money.
It's so fucked up.
And then in 1932, it was revived. Why?
Why was it revived?
You tell me. I'll tell you. I find it a very interesting theory while I was researching, though take it with a grain of salt, because this person, whoever it was online, gave zero sources for this, but I can understand the logic behind it. And this is where the prohibition stuff comes in. The theory goes that moonshiners of the area revived the tale of the Snallygasters. They used it as a weapon, sort of the same way that the slave owners did, to scare anyone away from making a move against them on their land and from random people stumbling across their illegal actions. They even claim that the story of the Snallygaster falling into the vat of moonshine and lie was to actually do two things. First, it was the police's way to possibly stop the moonshiners from using the Snallygaster in the future, and also stop people from buying illegal moonshine by saying there was lye in it. I think that that's like actually what happened. But that's not in Peter Boyd's book. Boynton. I keep saying his name different every time
That's
I say
an
it.
Andrew account.
So that's my little tidbit of the story. And in conclusion, all of this, plus the hilarious expedition done by the Washington Post, shows one thing. The Snallygaster is obviously fake, though it's captivating enough to live on in our culture to now. Thankfully, the creature has been stripped of all its racial and criminal undertones, which is nice, and has become more of a fun legend for the people of the area. There are festivals, games, and funnily, many bars named after the Snallygaster because he fell into a vat of moonshine. And hell, it made it into a Fallout game. So if it just shows you how persistent the legend is, Mothman happened in 1966 into 1967, December 15th to November 15th, when the Silver Bridge collapsed. That happened, and that's like a real actual tragedy in American history. It's still to this day the worst bridge collapse in American history, right? Nothing that they said happened actually happened for this thing to live on, but it's still in the same game that has Mothman. Like, that just shows how cool this thing is. It captures people because the story's so fucking stupid. And though the Snallygaster is one of the most outrageous of its peers, it's still filled to the brim with charm. And that concludes Snallygaster, the American Chimera. Thank you. You don't have to clap if you don't want to.
I'm going to clap for you. You're a great storyteller.
Thank you. I'm really happy with the writing on this episode, I got to tell you.
This was well done, Andrew.
Thank you.
And,
this was one of my favorite stories I've ever researched that just came out of fucking nowhere. I picked this because I was like, this is stupid. I went into it knowing it was really specifically stupid. And then now that it's done, it's kind of like, what's the Van Meter Visitor? It was an episode that I did way back in the beginning. This is basically that story, but like just way more fun and kind of like the methed out version of that. It's just like absolute balls to the wall the entire time. And like there's just dead ends everywhere that never get explained. Like what happened to the fissure in Italy? What happened to it going into the depths of hell? That just never gets explained again. Why are there no more eggs?
And what did customs
did they do with
the beluga caviar?
It would be funny if, as a joke, they threw it into the ocean anyway. But yeah, what did they do with all that caviar? But yeah, eventually we will cover other things that were mentioned in this episode, like if you want, we can do the Jersey Devil.
Oh, you haven't
in the
done that
future?
yet?
No. The Jersey Devil is an interesting story. It's basically a political campaign.
The Devils. You ever seen
and you like hockey, right?
Yeah.
We're the Devils.
Is that from hockey?
No,
It is
Hell yeah.
from Seinfeld, but it's like two hockey fans.
Interesting. I didn't know Seinfeld played hockey. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Rich. You're a hell of a fucking guy. Let me tell
Thank you, and thank you.
It's
for
so much fun
me on
having
here.
you. It's cool because these are very specific things that are only found in Fallout, and now they're only found with you as well. So
I'm just a Fallout guy.
I don't want to say that, but it works out that way. But thank you so much for listening. If you're interested in what Rich has going on, he has a viral TikTok. So you should go check that TikTok out and go make it more viral. You can find him at everything is below his face at this moment. Everything is now below my face at this moment. And now everything that I have is here. This is all my stuff. It's here. I've never actually done that 26 episodes in. I've never pointed to the box.
All of you guys watching, you should subscribe. Tell your friends about this and subscribe to this. Otherwise, I will come to your house and I will fucking kill you.
Make sure you pierce the jugular of that subscribe button.
Pierce it.
Eat the like button with your mouth.
Eat it.
Make a stir fry with that bell.
Make the stir fry with the bell.
I have to shit. I can feel like it's going to be liquid. Everyone have such a great night. Thank you so much for tuning into the Snallygaster, the American Chimera. And once again, Chris is laughing at the end of the episode. And listen, I got to end this one. I usually end it by saying something stupid. And I didn't think of one for this episode. So I'm going to end this episode by saying... I'm dry. I haven't had a good drink since I was killed in the Battle of Chickamauga.